Namaste. One person has no interest in actual sexual activity but finds excitement and satisfaction in showing off his body. Another person likes to beat up the partner during the sexual experiences. Both these instances are of paraphilic disorders. These disorders come out in extremely private spaces most of the time and are hardly talked about in society. However, those suffering from them experience substantial distress. To discuss the subject today, we have with us psychoanalysis consultant Mr. Himanshu Redya. Namaste.
Namaste.
So, sir, can we start with what paraphilic disorders are all about?
Paraphilic disorders are disorders related to what is called uh, anomalous flow of sexual preferences. Human beings have a natural range of sexual preferences. If the deviation from this norm becomes too much, we call it anomalous. Anomalous you can interpret to mean it's a radical departure from what otherwise is the norm. And this is with regard to sexual preferences. So when the sexual preferences, the mode of getting into sexual activity, the mode of getting sexual pleasure, the mode of experiencing, looking at, fantasizing sexual activity, when all of this starts deviating from the norm and the deviation is radical, the departure is radical, we call those sexual preferences as anomalous sexual preferences. And paraphilic disorders are disorders of anomalous sexual preferences. Another important element in this area is when we say deviation from the norm, the deviation is often causing distress to the person. It is not a
All right.
pleasurable deviation. A pleasurable deviation may just be a deviation from monotony just for the sake of change. But it is not for the sake of change. This is almost a compulsive deviation which causes personal, emotional, sexual, interpersonal, social, at times even occupational distress to the person. So it is not only an anomalous sexual preference. This anomalous preference causes distress to the person. The preference is lived out more often than not with a non-consenting other. So the other
All
whom
right.
the person with disorder engages with often is not consenting to that act and often is unsuspecting of that act. It happens all of the sudden. And that causes its own set of problems, both moral as well as legal. And all of this, because it leads to impairment, has some form of a compulsive nature to it. The person pays a heavy price for it, and all of this has to go on for a minimum period of 6 months for that anomalous preference to be called a paraphilic disorder. So paraphilic disorders are disorders of anomalous sexual preferences which causes distress to the person, distress to the other person who is the partner or who is almost forcibly co-opted as a partner or who is a victim, and it has to go on for a period of 6 months. That is where we would call that disorder, or not one disorder, the category of disorders as paraphilic disorders.
Right. So that brings a variety of disorders under this. So, what are disorders that this chapter cover?
This chapter covers 7 of them. Let
Oh,
us go into them one by one. First is the voyeuristic disorder. The disorder where a person derives pleasure not by participating in a sexual activity, but by looking at others doing it. It is a peeping Tom syndrome. And the person derives pleasure by looking at others. And this causes distress to the person, and obviously others can uh, persecute the person in legal and social terms if they come to know what he is doing, and the other he chooses don't know that this person is looking at him. So they are unsuspecting of this act being committed when this act is being committed. So this is the blatant intrusion into their privacy and therefore open to social and legal persecution. So this is the first part of it, which is voyeuristic disorder. And this is slightly different from enjoying looking at something pornographic, because there
Okay.
you are alone and you are not looking in reality at someone, and it is not
Mm-hmm.
distress causing to you. So this voyeuristic
Mm-hmm.
disorder is you are committing in reality on unsuspecting people who don't want it to be committed, who don't know it can be committed, and this causes a lot of distress to you because you know what you are doing can bring upon you moral, social, legal persecution. So this is the first one,
Mm-hmm.
voyeuristic disorder, deriving pleasure by looking at others without their consent, of course. The
Right.
second
Right.
disorder is exhibitionistic disorder. In this disorder, the person gains pleasure not by participating in a sexual act, but by exhibiting his body parts. And this often is done to an unsuspecting person who does not suspect that soon the other person is going to reveal his body. The third disorder uh, pertains to what is called futuristic disorder, which is inappropriate touching or groping of the other person without his consent. And that becomes a substitute, partially or completely, of the pleasure of the sexual act. Fourth is the sadistic sexual disorder, where the pleasure is derived by humiliating, degrading, harming, or beating up the other
Mm-hmm.
instead of in the normal sexual. Fifth is the masochistic sexual disorder, where the pleasure is gained not by participating in the act, but by inviting humiliation, degradation, beating, or slight pain onto oneself. In some cases, it can be even moderate to acute amount of pain.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have the pedophilic disorder, where one derives pleasure by indulging in sexual or near sexual activities with uh, partners much younger to their age and most of them not mature enough legally. And last is the sorry, not last, second last is the fetishistic disorder, where one derives pleasure by fantasizing, touching, playing with something which to somebody else may seem completely innocent, like a shoe or a shirt or a trouser. But such objects, they seem sexually provocative to that person. It can also be certain body parts that if they start feeling aroused, sexually aroused, when he touches that part of his body which to a normal person would be a completely non-sexual part of the body. So this is the fetishistic disorder where either you derive pleasure by playing with a part of your body which is non-sexual, or with an inanimate object like a shoe or a bag or a bed sheet or a garment, and that arouses sexually that person. So this is called the fetishistic disorder. And the last is uh, transvestic disorder, where dressing up like another gender provides excitement and pleasure to the person. So these are the 7
Mhm.
disorders. And obviously what is common to all of them are each disorder is an anomalous preference. Each disorder causes distress. Each disorder most of the time is perpetrated on an unsuspecting person, non-consenting person, and the disorder definitely causes distress to the person. So these are the 7 disorders covered up in this chapter.
So, what is the psychoanalytic explanation of the causation of paraphilic disorders?
Let us go one by one. Psychoanalysis has a lot to offer in explaining these disorders. Some common points of this chapter are Freud talked about the concept of component instincts. So, uh, the idea there was that we are born with component instincts, certain forms of deriving pleasure, and these component instincts come together under the overall arcade of genital sexuality and the person matures sexually. And these component instincts had to do with exhibitionism, voyeurism,
Hmm.
uh, sadism, masochism.
Okay.
And so this in this chapter we see disorders where somehow the process of all these component instincts getting submerged and sublimated into a mature genital state is undone and you regress back to the state of component instincts. So for a
Mhm.
normal person, the component instincts will come together, merge, sublimate, and move forwards as mature genital sexuality. That for some reason the process is unwinded, one regresses back to the state of disjointed component instincts. So that is uh, the disintegration of the mature sexual structure and regression back to the
Mhm.
state of component instincts is one important element which explains a lot of things in these chapters, many of the disorders. The second element is related to Oedipus. The third element is related to object loss. And the fourth is related to displacement of feelings of sexuality and anger. Now let us look at it one by one for the 7 disorders on how we can explain psychoanalysis. Uh, the first one, voyeuristic disorder. The psychoanalytic explanation is one, because of some stress, maybe unresolved Oedipus, too powerful father or too powerful mother, maybe because of uh, some other anxiety, the uh, person has regressed back to the state of component instincts. And he is going back now to that voyeuristic component instinct of deriving pleasure. So it's a regression back to the component instinct, number one. Number two,
Mhm.
it can also be a return to the state of primal sin, which one is trying to master by looking again and again at something akin to the primal sin. So the primal sin has
Mhm.
not been completely assimilated and processed through, it remains to be processed. Second, uh, the voyeuristic disorder. Voyeuristic disorder can also be an escape from inertia, risk, and the cost involved in actually doing the act. So instead of
Mhm.
involving oneself in an actual activity which would require a lot of work and energy, which might involve cost, both monetary and emotional, and can also involve some risk of pain or abandonment. You avoid all of it by enjoying that act by identification instead of participating in that act yourself. So it is avoidance of all of that. Third, it can also be inferiority, that you want something that you believe you cannot have, and therefore those things you try to enjoy vicariously by identification. So these are some of the explanations for the voyeuristic disorder. For exhibitionistic disorder, again we have the same thing. It is a regression back from the genital mature consolidated state back to the component instinct state where exhibitionism brings pleasure. It can also be because of object loss in early childhood, that in order to undo the object loss and in order to prove oneself to be good enough, this can be a quasi-histrionic act of regaining attention and regaining the lost object through a sexual mode. It can also be the gaze of the opposite parent, which is seen in the gaze of the other, which can also be arousing. Uh, then we come to the proteistic disorder. The pleasure here is based upon the pleasure of transgression and domination. That it is not only a groping act, it is also an act of transgression and domination. So it can be because of the hyperactive power drive. It can also be a reaction to inferiority. It can also be displacement of anger from mother or father onto others. It can also be the defiance of the big other, the law and the society, who prohibit or inhibit such acts and declare such acts as taboo, both morally and legally. And it can also be uh, the act of archetypical pleasure of hunting the unwilling victim. So this is how we can look at the whole proteistic behavior. It can also be just plain and simple hypersexuality, which is suppressed very heavily by a particular culture, because you will see this more in highly repressed cultures. And the more a culture is sexually liberal, the less it will be. So there's also an element of cultural repression of sexuality that means to some extent the proteistic disorder. Yeah. Then we come to the sadistic part. The sadistic disorder has to do with the template that giving pain will bring love and goodness, where the person has seen one parent dominating, giving pain to the other, and the other is then forced to be good to that person. It can also be displacement of anger from one of the parent onto the unsuspecting partner. It can also be displacement of frustration of life and anger in general on one person. It can also be because of some stress, one is going back into the component instinct stage of sadism. It can also be the Oedipus is not resolved, and therefore the person, because of the fear of castration anxiety, goes back to the anal stage, and the sadism of the anal stage takes over the person. So these are some of the reasons of the psychoanalytic explanations of the sadistic disorder. Then we come to the masochistic disorder. One explanation is it is outcome of a template, pain brings love. That maybe the parents gave the person some pain, and after that immediately love followed. It can also be the breakdown of the ego partially and a partial regression to the early stage of component instincts, where masochism was a normal way of pleasure. It can also be sadism by identification. That you want to be sadistic to somebody, you don't get anybody, so you satisfy that vicariously by masochism on oneself. It can also be because of very strong death instinct. That a death instinct being very strong, the mode of deriving pleasure becomes very strong through masochistic tendencies compared to the
Mm.
erotic or libidinal tendencies.
Right.
So it can also be taking revenge from parents by unconsciously communicating to them, look how I am suffering, so that the parents also suffer.
Mm. Mm.
It can also be turning of anger towards parents and others onto oneself, which is not expressed. So the
Okay.
early life murderous, torturous rage towards the parent, the anger built up over a period of time towards parents and others, which could not be expressed, turns on oneself. So all these can be reasons for the masochistic disorder. Then we come to
Mhm.
the fetishistic disorder, and this disorder has to do with Oedipal non-resolution, where the normal human sexuality is seen very threatening, and therefore a displacement happens, and one starts getting pleasure from something else, which we call as the fetish. So this is
Mhm.
essentially displacement because of Oedipal non-resolution, and it is also because of generation of quite an amount of fantasies related to that object of fetish. And the choice of object of fetish also is very important, because symbolically it would mean something to the person who is fantasizing. Then we come to the pedophilic disorder, and the psychological explanation here is this is uh, for a person who is not able to activate his masculinity or his femininity. So because
Mhm.
the archetypal role models were not available or they were not good enough, the masculinity or femininity could not be activated, and therefore uh, people of appropriate age, they seem too threatening, too powerful, and therefore one has to find somebody too young, which who in terms of power seems to be manageable. So we are looking at a
Right.
personality with unrealized, unactivated masculinity or femininity. We are looking at a person with a huge inferiority. We are looking at a person who has been severely dominated by a very dominating parent, generally of the opposite gender. And we are also looking at a person with most of the times an unresolved Oedipus. So this is and also a huge amount of power drive and a sadistic drive that accompanies this act. So it's also an exploitative drive, a power drive, and a sadistic drive.
Mm.
It is also an act of sort of destroying the world in anger in some way. It is also a kind of reenactment of one's own suffering by putting that suffering into someone else. So what somebody suffered as a child, he wants some other child to re-suffer so that the whole world can see and do something about it, empathize with it, try to heal that person, accept that person, acknowledge his suffering, and so on. It can
Mm.
also be identified with the aggressor, where somebody abused in childhood later on becomes an abuser himself and gets into the pedophilic disorder. So these are for the pedophilic disorder. And the last one is transvestite disorder, where the psychotic explanation is one, it can be a kind of a masculinity femininity mismatch between the psychological gender and the biological gender. It can
Mhm.
also be an attempt to regain the lost parent. So a man would put on female clothes to regain the lost mother, or the female would put on men's clothes to regain the lost father. And only after that loss is made good, one is able to actually be sexually active or aroused. It can also be the reenactment of the Oedipus, that it is the Oedipal
Mhm.
tree which is arousing the person. So these are some of the psychoanalytic explanations for disorders given in this chapter on paraphilic disorders.
So that's actually very interesting how vivid the emotional spectrum and the instinct spectrum move into the frame, all horizontally and vertically. But how does the psychoanalysis proceed with the healing of these paraphilic disorders?
Uh, Paraphilic disorder healing, usually we would start with a Cohusian approach and then go on to the Freudian approach most of the times. In some cases, we may need to go to the Kleinian approach. Some cases maybe even ISTDP approach. But in some cases, even the ISTDP approach. But usually you start with the Cohusian approach. The reason is this. This set of disorders have a huge amount of shame built into them. A
Very
social
true.
uh, a social ostracization, so to say, built into this. So first we have to provide a safe space to the person which does not have to fear shame or criticism. And it will take a long time before the person actually accepts and starts speaking about what problem he has. So the cohesion stance to begin with is very necessary. And then we can move on to the Freudian thing, or in some cases the Kleinian or ISTDP stance. And we would be looking
Mhm.
at usually uh, 2 to 3 sessions per week, and we'll be looking at least 1 to 2 years in most cases. Because this is something which will take quite an amount of time. This is not really a short-term thing. And some amount of time
Mm.
will be required to really make a difference. And the approach would be as usual, go into what is the cause of it. Revisit that traumatic place, revisit that constitutional element, revisit the over the time experience, make it conscious, articulate it, and through catharsis, release the feelings. This would be
Mhm.
the broad psychoanalytic movement. We can also complement it with CBT and holistic healing.
So, approximately how many years does it take if we go purely for psychoanalytic healing for it?
Uh, I
It's a
would
long
say,
term therapy for sure.
yeah, so I would say average, let us take 2 years.
All right. So, holistic healing is something we hear today all the time. Just now, you mentioned ISTDP, CBT techniques. They can also work wonders here. How would you connect this approach of holistic healing to this paraphilic disorders?
Uh, Homeopathy has some good remedies for the category of problems we are discussing.
Mm-hmm.
Another element of these problems is the high amount of shame and high amount of anxiety. So
True.
anything that allows you to reduce anxiety and provide relaxation becomes a relief for this person. So that is where Reiki, pranic healing, they come in. Some forms of
All right.
yogic breathing exercises also come. Pranayam also comes. Another
Mm-hmm.
important element of this category of disorders is the element of acceptance. Anything to
Hmm.
do with acceptance, acceptance therapy, or Rogers therapy of unconditional acceptance, unconditional positive
Mm.
self-regard. They are very, very useful. Another important element is of what I would say is harnessing the strength of the superego by giving yourself a
Okay.
positive goal. And that is very
Mm-hmm.
important in this category of disorders where the superego otherwise is very attacking to you.
True.
So if you can give yourself some uh, goal of the superego, accept what it is, and give yourself a proper goal of the superego to say, I accept what it is, I will get healed, and once I am healed, I will do X, Y, Z. And that is where
Mm.
belonging to a social group, doing some social work, having some sort of altruistic goal, almost on the lines of logotherapy, they help you to harness
Okay.
uh, the power of the superego. They help you to soften the inside attack of the superego. It tells you
Mhm.
you don't only have things which are shameful, there are many things which are good, which you also have. And therefore, these elements of positive thinking, of giving yourself a goal, joining a social group, which is into some social activity, and some social support group where people who have a similar trouble as you have can come together and provide mutual support to each other. All of these elements of holistic healing can greatly help the person in experiencing relief, in experiencing support and goodness of others, and also accelerate his healing, which is going on with the central work of psychotherapy.
I really like the way you actually brought the point of empowering the superego by actually going in altruistic way and rebuilding the superego. That's actually a very valid point here.
Yes.
So, when it comes to the patient education, sorry,
No, I was just about to make one more point that usually,
please, sir.
so usually we talk only about the superego pathology. Uh,
Mm.
Freud went to an extent where at one point he also said that one of the goals of the therapy should be to overcome the superego. And of course, he was
Okay,
mentioning
right,
towards the inner persecuting superego, not the good superego.
right.
Obviously, that goes without.
Good superego.
But so we have a full category of what is called superego pathology, but we don't
Mm.
have the superego power or the superego happiness. The positive aspects
Okay.
of superego we have really not harvested, and this is one of
Mm.
the prime areas where I think we need to harvest the positive parts of the superego.
That's really very important out here. So, when it comes to the individual suffering from the disorder, how is patient education important in the context of paraphilic disorders?
It is very important because first is how do we educate the person to accept himself and reduce this self-beating because of shame? Because these category of disorders are extremely shame-provoking disorders. So self-acceptance is a very important element which has to go into psychoeducation. Two, support groups are very important because here you are talking about somebody being in an extreme psychological minority. And the more you are in minority, the more lonely you feel, the worse you feel. So when you are in a group and you realize you are not the only one who has this trouble, it's a large group of people who have this trouble, it sort of rehabilitates you and makes you more of a citizen of the community.
Mm.
It's a form of a social rehabilitation in a very subtle way which happens inside. The third is to make the person understand that something deep is at work. It is not a question of the conscious will or conscious preference which is at work. And therefore, he has to be prepared to do the difficult work of going deep within to the causes. And it would take a lot of energy and time investment from him, both in therapy and outside therapy, to overcome this issue. The person can also be taught how to see what aggravates and what heals, which therapy method works, which medication works, whether homeopathy works, whether holistic healing works. So what works, what does not work? What are the do's and don'ts which help or don't help? And how the person can find out the right social support groups and the holistic healing techniques, some of which he can learn by himself. For example, the techniques of Reiki and pranic healing or breathing techniques, yogic techniques, he can learn by himself and practice it on himself. So all of these avenues to be opened up scientifically guide the person towards using holistic healing, making the person understand to some extent what is the cause behind what he is troubled by, and looking at the acceptance part of it, that you have to accept yourself and respect yourself unconditionally. From there we start. So accept yourself, respect yourself, then we start. If this is the kind of psychoeducation done, I think it helps a great deal to the person, and the person also is able to understand how much shame and how much difficulty it would be bringing onto the family members. So the person
True.
starts understanding with a cool mind instead of exploding to the family members. All of these uh, elements of congruence with the family members, uh, acceptance and self-respect, self-acceptance and self-respect, creating a whole basket of holistic healing tools, and accelerating the process of healing. All of that is helped if we do the right and adequate amount of patient education for the person.
Right. So we understand here that, for the people who are in the support role of from the family or from the society out here, it is more, they cannot see it as the suffering of the individual. They can see it as a criminal act or being a pervert. So what should the family members of the caregivers do if they are helping someone to come out of or deal with this paraphilic disorder? How important is their education and what is their role out there?
Psychoeducation of family members or caregivers is very, very important because this category of disorders is such a taboo and shame-inducing disorder that
Hmm.
first it's very difficult for any family member to discuss this disorder with the person.
True.
So most of the time it would be only person of the same gender who is a sibling who can at the most discuss.
Hmm.
But very difficult for parents to discuss this disorder with a child, maybe a son or a daughter. So first is we have to help the parent understand what it is all about, understand the fact that the person is not doing it on purpose. This is not a tantrum. This is a deeply seated, deeply rooted disorder. The roots are unconscious. It is not in the control of the person. The person is doing what he is doing despite himself. Two, we have to fortify the parents not to be too weak and fragile in front of the social system, and uh, face society with confidence and bravery, accepting whatever is the situation at home. Third, uh, we have to give them support. So, in case of a long uh, caregiving, long term in terms of the duration, they don't develop secondary issues of anxiety and anger or extreme shame, where they start boycotting going out to society and consequently have uh, effects on them for not socializing or being in touch with others to a bare minimum requirement. So they don't sort of self boycott, they don't arrange their own boycott by society in reverse. Fourth, if we educate them rightly, they can help the person choose holistic healing techniques, access holistic healers, access social support groups, and participate in them. And while he does that, the family member should encourage him and not censor or criticize him for doing what he is doing, because he'll be doing it at home or going to some circuits or groups. So he has to be encouraged, not criticized and persecuted. One more element is of knowing what works or does not work. The family members can provide an objective third party information on which medication or which therapy type or technique is working or not working, so that one can do more of it and less of something else. And lastly, uh, they can help the person in times of support by extending unconditional acceptance to the person and support to the person regardless of what he is or what he does, with a positive
True.
assurance and guidance that ultimately they are confident he will overcome this difficulty. All of this we can uh, accelerate or enhance by right and adequate psychoeducation of the parents.
So we understand that in today's scenario, when we hear so many different kind of news being popped up on TV channels and newspapers, how easy it is to just label the people as perverts or criminals or hypersexual or full of rage and dominance. But beautifully, you have explained how the different schools from psychology explains the causation and profoundly understands and can help the people to come out of these kind of distressful, shameful kind of disorders where they cannot even talk about it. And how the therapy and the therapist provides actually the non-judgmental and safe space for one to undo all the things which are happening not only in his psyche but also outside in the society. Thank you, Mr. Himanshu Vaidya, for sharing your knowledge with us on such an important topic today. Thank you. We have covered today paraphilic disorders, and in the subsequent videos, we shall be covering other disorders from DSM 5 in the same way. Do watch our upcoming videos and do write to us at hvindia@gmail.com. Namaste.